what's going on with parallel worlds, what's going on with PvP and everything. So that's why we decided to have one of the game designers with us, which is going to be Jason, and he will be very soon with us. Of course, after the interview, we'll have our normal raffle. We already selected the winners. And of course, we will have a bonus code for all of you, so you can enjoy goodies this weekend. But, you know, let's start from the very beginning. So basically, where are we standing right now? As you know, Race of Valor has been with us already for 2 weeks. It came on the 26th of September. And then since then we have been going, let's say that, well, the release came with some little problems and our team tackled those very quickly. So after the release, we had a first hotfix that came on the 31st of August. And it was basically aimed to solve, you know, some problems with map crashes. There was also some critical bugs with quests that couldn't be completed by you guys, so we also tackled those ones. There was also an issue with parallel worlds and monsters level 46 to 50. Their damage output didn't escalate properly, so we also tackled that. There were also some localization improvements to be made, and very, very important issue, we ensure that with this hotfix lots of points from the fame tree and the wisdom tree would be delivered to you, because some of you didn't have the correct transfer of points into your current trees, so that was also fixed. And well, we have like minor issues that were also balanced. But then we apply a second hotfix that came on the 3rd of September, and with this hotfix we also improved some of the map crashes that you guys were experiencing. We increased an issue with the health points that was ongoing, so basically the wisdom talent vitality increased now by 3% rather than the original 2%, so you know, giving you guys a little bit more of health in that respect and balancing in that way. There were also some bonus, diminishing damage bonus that were applied to PvP, and there were some monsters in parallel worlds that were a little bit complicated. We also tackled those, and we also corrected the value of the block strength. Then we have another little hotfix to fix the Cradle of Frost bug, which was a bug that you couldn't keep on with the story. You had to stop until it was fixed, and this happened. And we have another hotfix coming next week. It will be probably in the beginning of the week, we don't know, on Monday, on Tuesday, and this will be aimed to correct some performance issues. It will be smaller, and it's just to prepare everything for release 156. So this release, it's going to be, we already mentioned it from the very beginning, it's going to be tackling balancing issues, some polishing also will be made, and of course some bugs will also find a solution. So that's pretty much what I wanted to tell you, you know, a little idea of where we started and where are we now. And without further ado, I'm gonna present to you, well, our great person today, which is Jason here. Jason, if you don't know Jason, he has been already in our Twitch for some occasions. So basically, he's the lead game designer for Dragonknight Online.
Hello.
Hello, Jason. How are you doing?
I'm great, thank you, and I'm happy to be here.
Good. As I said, the reason why we wanted to have Jason today, it's because we saw, especially on the forums, but also on social media, that there are ongoing questions on, you know, communal topics. So we decided to address them directly and ask Jason, which speaks for the whole game designer team, what is the outlook on things, what are the future plans for some of the issues he has presented. So hopefully you will find this interesting, and so let's go. Okay, so Jason, first question is quite general. So what is your assessment after the release, the hotfixes that I just mentioned? Where are you guys at? What are your priorities at the moment? Can you tell us?
After 155 released, we immediately jumped into monitoring. We collected data, we're looking at the information, we're reading forums. Every day we look at things that didn't turn out entirely perfect the way we planned. It would have been awesome if everything came out perfectly the way that we had planned, and that every single class was balanced and every talent were working perfectly. But that doesn't really happen in the real world. We can play test and we can do live testing in our you know, the big feature environment, and we can have as much QA time as needed ahead of time. but there's a huge difference between having like a few dozen or a few hundred or even a few thousand players experience your game and start playing it and testing it, to having it in a live environment and having tens of thousands and even hundreds of thousands of players doing that. And so right now we're in the process of looking at everything we've done, and we're measuring, and we're identifying issues that we'd like to fix, things that need to be rebalanced, things that need to be tweaked just a little bit. Like I said, right now, when we started planning the content extension, one of the first things we decided was, once we knew when we were going to release it, we booked ourselves some time for polish and for balancing and for recalibration, and also to give a little bit of time so that we could look and see how the players reacted to it and what they learned about it and what their feelings were about things like the new skill system and the new content. And now that we're starting to collect that information through the forums, through just like our bug reports, through our community management, and through other sources, now we're starting to make changes so that we can adjust and make the game even better. DSO is a live product, it's a service, and we are always making it better. Just like we fix bugs on a daily basis, the content extension, it's no different.
Okay. Well, one of the things that comes, quite to the eyes if you go into the forums, on social media, it's the cry of the Dragonknights. The cry of the Dragonknights. So basically, there is this opinion. It's an ongoing opinion among some members of the community, that the Dragonknight itself got. Let's say that they feel that the class has been nerfed too much, and that it's no longer at the same level as the other classes. So of course, they find that this is a little bit unfair for them. So what is the opinion of the team on this issue?
All right, I'll speak on my opinion. First of all, my primary character is a Dragonknight.
Okay.
When I first started playing, it's the character that I play every day. I log in and actually play the game. And so yes, I am a Dragonknight, and I have great sympathy for my fellow Dragonknights. I did notice that yes, I seem to have lost a little bit of combat effectiveness. And the first thing I would like to do is say that I assure you that there was never a plan to, as Haruki says, to nerf Dragonknights. There was nothing like that. But the first issue that came up was that we noticed that one of the critical formulas was not working as designed. That was a formula problem, and it was fixed in one of the bugs. The biggest, or rather one of the hotfixes. The biggest issue is that these changes take time. And we, rather than like fixing something and pushing it out to the live environment as soon as possible, we need to make sure that a bug is behaving the way that that there's an actual problem. We need to look at the data. We need to analyze it. We need to be able to see if we can reproduce it in our environment, and then we need to actually figure out what went wrong. And that involves looking at the code, looking at the game design, looking at all the formulas, and determining what exactly was happening there. Is it happening the way it's described? And we need to subtract every bit of, I would say, like emotional experience around it, and look at the actual hard, cold facts of what actually happened there. And then when we figure that out, we can fix it. We submit it to our wonderful development department, and our programmers then identify the problem. They make the corrections, and then we start testing it. We both test it with the game design team, and then we submit it to the QA department. And so we do recognize that the Dragonknights, the poor noble Dragonknights, have had a little bit of a setback in their combat effectiveness, and we're collecting as much information as we can so that when we make a fix, if we make another big fix, it'll be the right fix. This is one of those cases where we need to like measure twice, cut once, because the last thing anyone wants is for us to be making changes and then having to like make another change and another change. And think of it like a boat, where you don't want to just keep running from side to side every time the boat starts to rock, because that's just going to create a problem. You want to get towards the center and let the boat stabilize. And so that's really the position we're at. We're collecting information, we're reading the forums, we're reading the Facebook comments from all of our devoted players, and we're listening, and we're adjusting things as quickly as we can, yet at the same time trying to make sure that we do things right.
I guess that it all, of course, amounts to the fact that Race of Valor was it was the biggest content update, I think.
It is the largest content update that this team has done.
Exactly, and as he's saying, and I would like to repeat this because I get this question a lot in forums, it's like, you guys are really listening, and yes, we are. The problem is that you always, and maybe you can offer another vision in this respect, but it's always, it's dangerous as well to make a decision based on a heated moment.
Yes.
And as far as I know, you guys are always having this combination between what the community says and what the actual data and statistics of the game show.
Right, right. Well, we want to make sure that that what's happening is that there's as much overlap between what the community is saying and what the data shows. And if there's a problem, if there's a big difference, we need to understand why what the community is saying is different from what the data shows. And that that's part of the art of game design, rather than just being a science. Sometimes the art is determining what the actual, like, the truth of the matter is. And sometimes the truth can be between the data and the player feedback, because game experience is what it's all about.
Okay. Next question is about the drop rate. That's also another question that a lot of people have voiced on the forums. There are some parts that feel that the drop rate is inadequate for the new maps, or poor even. So for example, the quantity of undermanned, by slaying monsters that are a little bit lower or even bigger. They feel that the undermanned should be bigger in this content expansion than the previous maps. So anything you can say about this?
Yes. Good. We're improving the drops of undermanned.
Okay, good.
That's. I mean, there's not much more to say with that. We're looking at the information. When we initially charted out the Andermont cost or the loot drops, it was always based on what a natural progression of previous loot drops was. And sometimes, again, this is where game design is more of an art than a science. We realized that the emotional experience players had with, even though the Andermont was completely scaled with what the previous loot drops were, the experience you got, the feeling of how much you got and how it felt to get it was lacking, and so we're improving the loot drops.
Okay, then so yeah, expect this. I think that there are already some changes to be done in 1.5.6, if I am not mistaken.
Yeah, 1.5.6 we'll see a lot of changes.
Okay.
You'll start to see some really dramatic changes in the in just all sorts of things. We've got changes coming in that affect balancing on a number of systems. Okay, well, that's a good thing to hear, and I'm pretty sure some of people will appreciate that. So now let's move to parallel worlds, shall we? Parallel worlds.
The lovely parallel worlds.
Let us move to the parallel worlds.
Well, we know that we had some issues with Rise of Valor and the parallel worlds that were tackled with the hotfixes, but I am referring here to the promise that has been made that in the release 1.5.7, which will happen in October, there is going to be a reworked version of the parallel worlds. So yeah, we have heard this quite a lot, but can you explain us more in detail what this rework is going to be?
Well, we are let me start over. From the very beginning, when we started talking about the content extension and raising the level cap, we knew that the parallel worlds would be necessary, that we needed to improve that, to raise the level cap there so that we had more end game content for our high level players. But when we started to scope like how much work was going to be entailed with the content extension and with the new skills system and all of the other things that happen behind the scenes, and there are many, many things that happen that aren't immediately visible to players, we realized that it was way too much to do in that one brief period of time, and also it was what we call too much risk. There were too many things that we were shifting around, and we needed to make sure skills were solid and balanced before we started, like creating the parallel worlds. We needed to make sure that the loot experience was awesome in the content extension before we started talking about how to rebalance loot for the parallel worlds. But for the past month, now that the content extension has been completed and is in this, final bug fixing and polishing phase and rebalancing phase, we're now full bore into working on the parallel worlds for the last month. Every morning at our stand-ups, we've been hearing, the strike team talking about what they're doing with the parallel worlds. It's very cool. So we're seeing the parallel worlds. We're talking about, or the things that we are discussing and are in some cases in the process of implementing are different difficulties so that players will be able to choose a more granular experience in the parallel worlds. We're talking about rebalancing the loot and the experience rewards for the parallel worlds. I can't remember exactly, but I think that there might be some additional quests or offered to include in the parallel worlds. I mean, maybe Haruki.
Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
I think so. I've heard something about it. Yes.
There are new high-level loot items that are going to be dropped in the parallel worlds, and I mean, just pretty much everything that you would expect that would continue from the parallel worlds. We're going to be doing that, and a lot of attention is being paid in making sure that we were going to get it right. Initially, our plan was to release the parallel worlds in 1.5.6. But we decided that it was worth the extra time and effort to make sure that we got it right, and so we decided to release it later in the 1.5.7 to give the process a little bit of time to breathe, so that we could be really careful, and also so that we could get as much information as we could from 1.5.5 and the content expansion and all of the rework we did there, and make sure that we used that information and that knowledge in the parallel world rework. So there you go.
There I go. Very, very good answer. It's a pity that we don't have here today a member of the level design team, because I'm sure they could also shed some light on the polishing that they are doing to the parallel worlds, which I think is going to be very, very nice. But time is running, and I would like to go into PvP, Jason.
PvP.
How do you feel about that?
PvP, it's funny, I've been here a year and a month now, and PvP has been an issue that we have been talking about every single release. Yes. And PvP is very important to us, and we understand that there's some player frustration there. It's a common issue that comes up, and we are very sincere and serious in our attempts to get our PvP experience as awesome as it can be. We've been working on fixing the formulas that both enable our matching, that rate players against one another, and working on fixing the formulas that actually match players against one another. Those are two separate systems that have to work side by side, and figuring out what is going wrong or what's not working 100%, and then figuring out how to get those systems right it's a very slow process. We had to create what we call tracking events, so that we are actually looking and finding out what's happening behind the scenes and collecting as much information as we can, so that we can start figuring out how to fix it. One of the big initiatives that I've put into place quite recently is sort of the establishing key goals for our PvP. I mean, we can be what we call reactive to PvP, where we just try to fix the problems as quickly as we can identify them. But the other issue that I've insisted on is basically realizing that we evaluate what our PvP experience is right now, like just a complete honest appraisal of it, and then looking at what we want our PvP experience to be. And that's different from just saying, oh, we have problems we need to fix. It's basically saying, what do we think the best PvP experience is? And then we're going to be nailing down all of the ways that we can get there. And right now, we're looking at a number of really cool PvP improvements, some of which are big, some of which are small. And all of these are going to be, hopefully, getting to the point where players will find that the PvP experience is as awesome as it can be, for players who are experienced and hardcore PvP players to people who just want to occasionally dabble in it. I think that there's a lot of improvement we could do for both ends of that spectrum and everywhere in between.
Yeah, because it was mentioning in our dev diaries that actually the current Fame tree, I mean the reworked Fame tree, it's a foundation. So it's a foundation for further changes to be implemented. And as far as I know, what you guys want to do, it's create new talents, or new abilities that you could be able to select later on in a higher state. So actually, there is a lot of complaint from veterans in PvP, you know, people who have been playing PvP since the very beginning and they are very high ranks. So this would be actually thing for them to look forward to, the fact that,
Right.
well, PvP is not going to start as it is right now. There is going to be always something better to look for. And you have something to add to that?
Yeah, we're committed to making sure that our PvP experience feels extensible, and that's why if you look at the PvP talent tree, you'll notice that there's a lot of space for expansion. And that doesn't mean just continuing to add PvP talents and like raising information, but for actually making the PvP experience better. And so we're committed to both giving players additional abilities in PvP, you know, new talents that will make them be able to customize their PvP experience more, but also, like I said, in making sure that we're correctly calibrating players' actual level of ability in PvP and their success rate in PvP, and matching players better together so that your PvP experiences always feel like there's some element of uncertainty, because even though it can be kind of, you know, fun to get into a really uneven PvP match, that's really fun for one side of that equation, and the other player usually feels like they didn't get a great chance. So our goal ultimately is fair and equal PvP.
Okay, we are running out of time, but I would like to mention the fact that one of the things that I also read from the comments was that, for example, 6 versus 6 mode on PvP, it feels still not really balanced, in the sense that it's, as an experience, it's easier or, you know, less challenging to play as the red team more than the blue team. And I would like to assure you guys that we had a talk with Jason and his guys, and this is also going to be addressed in the future.
We've got a bunch of ideas for how to fix that and make it better, and we're going to be putting them into development, testing them, and making sure that they actually improve the situation.
Okay, cool. And now we go to another topic that lots of people probably are wondering, why are we not tackling this? And this is the critical hit rate.
Critical hit rate.
Yeah, so there was this, also again, to use the words, there was a nerf in the, you know, in the critical hit rate, and I would like to see if you guys have an official statement about that. What was the logic behind it? Because it's something that a lot of people are talking about it, and so here's your moment.
Okay, well, I don't have what would be an official statement on the critical hit rate. Let me just tell you, I mentioned earlier that there are some things that happen behind the scenes with the content extension, things that we don't necessarily, like, they're not bullet points, they're not things that, you know, we can advertise that we did, but one of the huge things that we did that happened behind the scenes on Dragonknight Online is we recalibrated and fixed and improved in many ways our combat formulas, like the actual math that determines who hits who and how hard they hit and how much time. Is it a critical hit? Is it not a critical hit? Because some of those formulas were really complicated. They weren't working the way they were designed, and so sometimes the behavior that the players were used to was not the way that we actually intended for them to work. And what that comes is that we have a lot of this sort of legacy gameplay. And when we looked at how to improve the game and extend it over the long term, because I think in the 2 years since the last content extension, you know, we hadn't really like geared the game towards going, like, improving and increasing the level cap to level 50 and eventually to, you know, levels above 50. And it was really necessary to start reevaluating and changing, in some ways, this math and these combat formulas to make the gameplay extensible and scalable to levels beyond level 50. And so what that meant, though, is that in some cases, for example, the critical hit rating changed. And we're currently, as with every part of the balancing changes we made and the just the overall gameplay experience, we're looking at the data, we're calculating, you know, we're seeing how has this fundamentally changed, how much of this is a player feeling about it versus how much is actually happening, and where can we find a solution and a balance that's somewhere in the middle to make both the game scalable to higher levels of play and also yet still behave the way that the game really, like, and the math should support it. So like I said, we're looking at it, we're trying to do as the best we can, and it may, unfortunately, it doesn't happen immediately. It takes time to gather data, and also we, I know that many times players, they make their dissatisfaction very vocal on the forums, and we appreciate every voice because that really shows that you are interested in the game and you do want the best gameplay for Drakensong possible. And just be assured that we're reading comments and we're listening to feedback, no matter what volume it's at. And as you can see from just this Twitch conversation here, we're very interested in hearing about your gameplay and also improving it for everybody's benefit.
Okay, we are running a little bit out of time, but I also noted down some people have also issues with the damage mitigation, the correlation between offense and defense, numbers, while playing not only PvP but also PvE. And I think that this is also something that, along with those, maths and the revision of the formulas, you're also tackling, right?
Yeah,
okay.
It's. I hate to sound like a broken record, but yes, like everything, we're aware that there are some issues with damage mitigation. We're looking at as much information as we can, and honestly, the more people play and the more feedback they give us, the more we're going to be able to understand exactly what's happening and make the correct fix and get things, if not perfect, as close to perfect as can be.
Yes. And okay, so I would like to wrap this interview. Of course, I am completely aware, guys, of the fact that you guys sent us a lot of questions in Facebook as well, and of course we cannot tackle all of those. Maybe if we see that there are still some questions to be answered, we can invite Mr. Jason here.
Anytime.
Anytime.
I'm just across the hall.
On the other room.
Yes.
But I would like you to confirm us that, of course, with something that Greg and me, we have been talking about, the new archetype, or the new class, if you want to call it. It's coming, right?
It's coming. we're actually, we're, as soon as, literally until August 26th, our primary focus was content extension, getting the content extension done. Now we have a strike team. We have an early concept for our new archetype. We are getting some concept art made up. We know what we want. We are exploring our options, and we have a plan. And we just need to get it approved, make sure that everyone in the team is happy with the direction we're going. It should be, I'm having a hard time imagining anybody would be upset or disinterested in this cool new archetype. And then, as I said, we'll be working on getting that underway, breaking out equipment lists and powers and animations and a visual style and backstory and narrative and all of the cool stuff that comes with a new archetype.
And I can totally vouch for Jason's words, since it was like some weeks ago that we had like a brainstorming session in a little room.
He was in the room.
And we were there as well, community managers. So I know that for a certain fact that's very, very cool things are coming.
Right.
Also applied to the content expansion of next year.
Yes.
We are starting already to, brainstorming in a very, of course, basic level.
Yeah, and can I interrupt for a moment?
Of course.
Okay, the one thing I should say is that if it makes, puts our community at ease, in every one of these discussions where we're starting to talk about a major new system that can influence players or new content or just something that will either change or add to the gameplay experience for our community, we are having our community managers be present in that and listening to their voices as well, because they are your advocates. And so I'm just saying, we're listening.
And there. Okay, so Jason, a lot of thanks for this time that you have given to us. Anything you want to say to wrap up your speech?
Dragonknights, take heart. Your struggle is known to us, and we're doing our best.
Okay, so thank you very much. I have to say that also my main is a Dragonknight, so.
Dragonknights represent.
A lot of people think that we don't like certain classes here, and the more you go through different departments, then you see that everyone is playing Dragonknights, a lot of rangers, mages, and some little steam mechanicus are also being played, one guy in the room. So yeah, well, thank you very much, Jason, for your time, and I'll see you next time. Huh?
Yes, take care.
Okay, cool.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, guys, so well, that was Jason, our lead game designer, and I hope you found some of his answers good. I know that I'm running out of time. This is what happens when you have an open interview, kind of. But I want to mention of course, some very little things before I go. One of the things that I wanted to mention is that we are still receiving submissions for our costume event. Glyphs. As a reminder. Huh?
Glyphs.
Ah, the glyphs is true. That I will mention later. But basically, the costume event is something that gives you the opportunity of sending us a design for the next costume, Lord Tag costume. We're already receiving around, 50 good submissions that are going to make it to the final, which will start next week. So if you still want to participate, you have till Sunday this week to send us your design. And remember, if your design gets chosen by our lovely team of artists, you're going to see that design inside the game. Another thing that I wanted to talk was Glyphs of Power. As you may know, there is still an ongoing issue with the Glyphs of Power, which affects some random players and some objects in their possession. Between release 154 and 155, they saw that some glyphs were, they disappeared. We didn't steal them from you. We found exactly where the error is, and it will require a little downtime, so this will happen probably in 156. So 156 will also have that fix for you guys. The most important thing, and we already announced it on the forums, is that you keep those items that are affected by this problem with the Glyphs of Power, and then we will give it back to you. If you have any questions or any problems, you can also contact our support center, and they will attend you at the best of their capabilities. And before leaving away, of course, you know that every time that there is Twitch, there is a little raffle. Again, as a reminder, we have changed the way the raffle works. We already have the winners before the Twitch starts, just some minutes before. So you can always, after this Twitch, send us a message to DSO Twitch at bigpoint.net, and then you give us the name of your character and the server you normally play. And please no duplicates, because duplicate people don't make it to my pool of prizes. So this week we have a lot of winners. Each of the winners is going to get 1 week premium plus the item that appears next to the name. So there they are, our lovely winners. We have winners from Agathon, Grimag, Heredur, Warian, from pretty much all the servers, I think, except Valor. I guess not so many people playing. The one that has Undermanned, it's going to be 20,000 Undermanned for you, so really, really cool. And we have everything, emotes, mounts. These things will be sent to you hopefully today. If you don't receive them today, they will come on Monday. So yeah, congratulations to you guys, and yeah, enjoy those goodies if you happen to be one of the lucky ones. And of course, we go to the moment that everyone waits for, which is bonus code time. Those of you who actually follow our newsletter know that sometimes we also give bonus codes, special ones, for newsletter subscriptions. So please don't hesitate to subscribe to our newsletter, and you will get very, very cool things as well there. The bonus code of this week, it's gonna have this amazing set of goodies, a little consumable, some essences for you and your battles, a little onyx, and some potions. So enjoy those, and the word that we have for you, and Jason is copying it, is we love goodies, because it's true, we love it. So this code is going to be active from today, from now, till Monday. So make sure you go and check this, and then you can enjoy these things during the weekend. And that's pretty much it, guys. I'm sorry that the Twitch session of this time has been a little bit shorter, but next week with Greg we'll be able to, and make more things. It's also interesting for us if you have any suggestions about how you like our Twitch, if you would like to have more interviews with people from the team, or you would like to see more Let's Play, or other things that come to your mind, don't hesitate to send us also your feedback on the forums, and we are also reading those things. For example, you can go to the staff dialogue in the main section of the English forum, and then let us know. We are always reading there. We are trying to answer as often as we can, and we would love to see you there. Okay, so I think this is everything that I have for me today. It's a pleasure to be with you, and I will see you during next Twitch. Bye bye, and have a